So hello, I'm going to be narrating my own book today. It's Of Noble Family. I'm Robinette Cowell, for those of you wandering in randomly. And Dustin Anderson is my audio engineer. He's going to be in the empty box down below. So we're going to record just a little bit. We're starting with the setup so you can see how the mic gets set and all of that, because people keep asking what an audiobook recording session is like, and I figured with my own book, I can show you. All right.
Cool.
Now we're going to ignore you.
Yeah, you just get.
I'm gonna, once you get set, I'm going to ask you to turn the overhead up.
Yep.
I'm getting up there on the screen.
Yep, you bet. No problem. Mary's pretending to be nice to me right now. She's normally yelling at me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's the only way to go.
I did, yep.
That.
Might be able to just read it right from your email.
Okay, so.
Reaching over your head.
Well, that is your job.
It's my job description. Reach over people's heads.
There we go. This performed by the author is not accurate, since there are, in fact, two other narrators.
Ooh, good call.
We'll do that later.
Yeah. Why don't we? Yeah, we'll say I'll write a new one. Do you know the names of the narrators yet?
I've been told, but I don't remember off the top of my head.
We'll get that. Yeah, we'll get that squared away.
Yeah, it's Princess and Robin, but I don't know their last names.
Oh, okay. How are we doing as far as your visual?
You're totally fine.
I might drop it down just a little bit.
Okay.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
How are you now?
Yeah, you
still good?
Yeah, you can come down to here.
Pretty good right there. We're gonna try that, and if we're getting some like popping, then I might bring it back up again.
Sounds good.
Cool. And then right to left. Does that seem centered in front of your?
It seems a little off to the side. Do you want me to move myself?
Yeah, if you're able to. If it's not too hard.
Cool.
Perfect. It's still comfortable?
Yep. Great. Oh, and can you flip the overhead up? Thanks.
All right, so you'll just hear me. We'll talk back. We'll just start right on. There's a dedication.
Okay. There is.
Great. We'll start right there then, probably.
Sorry, I'm so lost the. There it is.
Great.
Okay. I'm all set. So now I'm sitting in the dark. So what's happening now is Dustin's going over into the other room. I read off of the tablet, so a lot of times the glare is a problem. And then I think there's a way for me to start this so that you stay focused on me. I should maybe have gotten this a little more professionally lit. So, hello.
Hello.
All right. So then.
Yeah, so if you want to just go ahead and read just a little bit, just so we can get started. I'm going to start tweaking some things, and if you hear anything in your headphones that, if it's getting too loud or too quiet, just speak up and let me know.
Okay, sounds great. For my brother, Dr. Stephen K. Harrison, a.k.a. Apeface. Let other pens dwell on guilt and misery. I quit such odious subjects as soon as I can, impatient to restore everybody not greatly in fault themselves to tolerable comfort, and to have done with all the rest. Jane Austen, Mansfield Park. 1. Cherubs and Monsters. The presence of an infant in any gathering offers all the substance for conversation one might require. In some instances, the child's behavior might occasion a desire to leave the room, but it will still provide something to discuss, even if it is only the infant's volume of squalling. In other circumstances, the conversation might turn to which parent the child most resembles. In the case of Jane's new nephew, the current visitor, Herr Scholes, appeared content to make faces at the infant upon his knee. The celebrated glamourist widened his eyes, rounded his mouth into a circle, and made the most ridiculous noise. The whole of his expression was at odds with his reputation as one of the great glamourists of the ages. Young Tom giggled in response, and waved his plump fists. Even under a lace cap, the richness of the infant's red curls was apparent. "Oh, what a Rotstuff you are! Like one of Rubens' Cherubinen, eh?" And Dustin, that's one that I won't actually do.
Gotcha. No problem.
At that, Tom's gaze drifted from the elderly glamourist's face, as if he were watching something that attracted him. Every infant Jane had known stared as Tom did, seeming to fix upon random patterns in the air. Yet, if one switched one's vision to the ether, the object of the infant's fascination would be clear. Loose strands of natural glamour floated in front of Tom. Jane glanced across the room to where her husband, Sir David Vincent, sat by the window, with a faint smile warming his features as he watched Herr Scholes play with their nephew. During the 4 months they had been in residence in Vienna, Vincent had taken the opportunity to refresh his acquaintance with his old mentor, Herr Scholes. Their time in the city had led to a softening in Vincent, who seemed to have shed layers of disquiet. His blue coat of superfine hung to advantage on his broad shoulders. Once, the strong line of Vincent's jaw had...
Cool, we're getting close here.
Okay.
How about, are there any sections where you like are screaming or getting really loud?
Not, nothing that's coming up anytime in the near future.
Are you able to just like yell at me for a second? Just to set levels. Make sure we're not going to clip if we do.
Yes, of course I can yell at you. Good Lord. Good God, man.
Tell me how terrible of a person I am.
You're not. But I mean that's about
okay.
the level that I'll be yelling at.
We're totally good then.
Okay.
All right. So I think we're ready to go as long as the volume in your headphones is all right.
Yes, the volume in my headphones is lovely. Ah, darn it. That was me accidentally closing the document. That's what that was.
Gotcha. So we're starting on For My Brother then? Is that where we're starting on?
Yes.
Okay, and then we'll drop right down to the quote from Jane Austen.
Thanks. And for the watching audience, I should explain that because we have two narrators, who, in addition to me, I'm going to be skipping some lines, which is going to make a very interesting listening session for you guys, since you're only going to get the part of the dialogue. But Dustin is going to be placing those later.
Yep.
All right.
All right. So.
Whenever you're ready.
Yeah.
Dustin.
Yep. Just give me 1 sec here. Also worth mentioning to the listening audience. So Mary's room is 100% soundproof. Unless a bomb blew up. My room, however, is not, and so you might be hearing potentially noises from my control room that will not be getting into the recording. So if you're just questioning that, that's just something worth bringing up, I guess.
Yeah, although with all of the snow on the ground outside, there's not that much traffic today, thank you.
That's true. All right, so
okay.
Yeah, if you're ready,
I am.
Then we will start. So we are recording.
For my brother, Dr. Stephen K. Harrison, a.k.a. Apeface. Let other pens dwell on guilt and misery. I quit such odious subjects as soon as I can, impatient to restore everybody, not greatly in fault themselves, to tolerable.
Impatient 2.
Oh, sorry.
Yep, no problem. So we'll come in after as soon as I can.
Okay.
I missed the punch. Here we go.
Okay.
Hold on 1 second. Got an issue here.
So I just realized, listening audience, that you cannot actually hear what's happening. He's playing part of the sentence for me And then, so he's playing, I quit such odious subjects as soon as I can, and then I will start talking. So it's called a rolling punch.
Yep, and apparently I wasn't on punch mode, so now we are,
Okay,
and
fantastic.
Here we go.
Impatient to restore everybody, not greatly in fault themselves, to tolerable comfort, and to have done with all the rest. Jane Austen, Mansfield Park. 1. Cherubs and Monsters. The presence of an infant in any gathering offers all the substance for conversation one might require. In some instances, the child's behavior might occasion a desire to leave the room, but it will still provide something to discuss, even if it is only the infant's volume of squalling.
Yeah.
Even if it is only the infant's volume of squalling. In other circumstances, the conversation might turn to which parent the child most resembles. In the current visitor, Herr Scholes appeared content to make faces at the infant upon his knee. The celebrated glamourist widened his eyes, rounded his mouth into a circle, and made the most ridiculous noise. The whole of his expression was at odds with his reputation as one of the great glamourists of the ages. Young Tom giggled in response and waved his plump fists. Even under a lace cap, the richness of the infant's red curls was apparent. At that, Tom's gaze drifted from the elderly glamourist's face as if he were watching something that attracted him. Every infant Jane had known stared as Tom did, seeming to fix upon random patterns in the air. Yet, if one switched one's vision to the ether, the object of the infant's fascination would be clear. Loose strands of natural glamour floated in front of Tom. Jane glanced across the room to where her husband, Sir David Vincent, sat by the window, with a faint smile warming his features as he watched Herr Scholes play with their nephew. During the 4 months they had been in residence in Vienna, Vincent had taken the opportunity to refresh his acquaintance with his old mentor, Herr Scholes. Their time in the city had led to a softening in Vincent, who seemed to have shed layers of disquiet. His blue coat of superfine hung to advantage on his broad shoulders.
Just a little tick in that sentence. Let's back up just a little bit.
Sure thing.
Sounds great, though.
Now, this is the part that I do for my readings. So this one's rehearsed.
Very nice. Sounds great.
Thanks.
Keep it up. And also, just for the audience as well, I have a little talkback that you're not able to see. So anytime I'm talking to Mary, I'm punching that button, and yeah, she can hear me that way.
Yeah. His blue coat of superfine hung to advantage on his broad shoulders. Once, the strong line of Vincent's jaw had seemed incapable of anything more than disdain. Now he was captivated with Tom to the point of offering to watch the boy, while Jane's sister and her husband made calls. Truly, Jane thought that Vincent might even be pleased that Tom's nanny had been taken with an ague. Vincent sat forward as Tom snatched at the empty air in front of Herr Scholes. Love, he simply has not yet learned to distinguish between the corporeal world and the ether. Jane laughed at her husband.
Okay, so yeah. I'm starting to get into this and figure out what's going on. Can I have you just take just a little bit longer pause for
Sure
me?
Thing.
Because I'm trying to drop these markers, and
Yeah.
Just a little bit longer pause would be great.
No problem. How long do you want?
Let me see here. It looks like
count?
Probably 3 count would be the best.
No problem.
Yep. So it looks like we've been getting about a 2 count.
I will do 3.
That'd be awesome.
Yes, and for the listeners, I'll just do 1, 2, 3 so that you know what I'm doing. Just because.
Are you headbanging? Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, no. That's right. You can't see me. I can see you in the monitor. But I'll hold up 3 fingers.
Okay, gotcha. Cool. All right, so here we go.
Okay. Jane laughed at her husband. Melody was reaching for glamour threads, at least this young, likely sooner, though it is hard to tell before they begin to require some coordination. Herr Scholes wrinkled his nose at the little boy. Of course. When Jane had first met Herr Scholes, she had been too intimidated by his reputation to perform glamour in front of him without a great deal of persuasion. But he had been so generous with his attention that Jane soon lost her fear. Seeing him make faces at Melody's baby only endeared him to her further. She let her gaze shift to view the ether and pulled forth a fold of glamour, twisting the ray of light into a simple red ball, which she bounced between her hands. It took so little effort that her heart barely sped at all. Tom's gaze followed the arc of the ball with lively curiosity. Jane bent the strands that created the illusory ball so that it came closer to the infant. He snatched at it as it swung by, frowning as his hand passed through it. Herr Scholes nodded with mock seriousness. Give me but a moment. Jane let her own vision shift from the corporeal world into the second side of the ether, and loosened the strings of light that made up the red ball. She let them slacken into nether red, the area of the spectrum below visible sight. In her own second sight, the strands of glamour glowed. They stretched out of the ether, wrapped around her hand, and twisted into the shape of a ball. Her view of the corporeal world was little more than a dim, gray perception of the room. Still, she could see Tom clearly enough to know that he, too, watched a ball that was no longer visible to normal sight. Vincent clapped his hand upon his knee. Yes, yes, he is exceptional. She could not help but laugh at her husband. Herr Scholes crossed his eyes for the boy. Surely not. Jane was so astonished that her vision snapped back to the corporeal plane. That cannot have been safe for the mother or child. He winked at Jane. Vincent cleared his throat. It was unnecessary, but Jane was nevertheless grateful for Vincent's consideration. Her miscarriage was far enough in the past that remembrances of their childless state did not provoke the sharp pain it once had. Her nephew did much to soothe her, as did the reminder that with infants came a long list of messes that were kept in check by only the presence of a nanny. Still, it was awkward that everyone expected her and Vincent to have children by now. 3 years they had been married, while Melody and Alistair had been wed little more than a year and had time to show for their time. Jane let the glamour she was holding unravel back into the ether. Did you say pranks? Imagine my curiosity at my husband's exploits. Pray, do not keep me in suspense. Herr Scholes gave a little chuckle. Again, Vincent cleared his throat. Vincent's blush was most becoming. Jane asked, all innocence, Fishpaw. Her husband shifted in his seat and rubbed his brown curls into an even more riotous mess. Wow, they took a lot here. We're skipping.
Yeah, oh my goodness. Whew, this will be interesting to edit.
Yeah, he's going to be, well, I mean, that's going to be all Prentice going back and forth with himself.
Sure.
So now we're on to page 17.
Oh, wow, okay. Wow, okay.
Yeah.
So we're going now starting on the third line there. Vincent rubbed the back. Okay,
yep.
Great. All right.
Good luck,
Dustin. This will be interesting with editing. Just for people watching, I'm dropping markers in the Pro Tools session every time that the other people that Mary is not narrating are speaking. And so then I will have to plug all those recordings into the session. And hopefully, if I've dropped all these markers correctly, we can just copy and paste where they need to go. So.
Yeah. And I should also say, because I don't think we'll get to this section during this session, part of the reason we have someone else recording is because, and this is not a spoiler, because it's on the back cover, and it's is that they go to Antigua, and there's a significant population of African Caribbean characters. So I felt like I would have been the wrong narrator choice if this weren't the fifth book in my own series. So I asked Audible, and they were fantastic, and they've given me two narrators to perform with, who are going to be doing these other characters. And I figure since I have a male narrator, let's have Vincent actually voiced by a guy for a change. All right, let's start up again.
Awesome. So page 17, 3 lines down.
Yep. Vincent rubbed the back of his neck and gave a dry grimace. Her usually gruff husband appeared to be an embarrassed schoolboy. Given his height and the breadth of his shoulders, it was an incongruous expression, rather like one might expect from a chagrined bear.
Can we grab incongruous one more time?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Given his height and the breadth of his shoulders, it was an incongruous expression, rather like one might expect from a chagrined bear. He adjusted the cuffs of his coat, a blush still high on his cheeks. The glamorist tapped the infant's nose with his forefinger. Tom gurgled with delight, offering no escape for Vincent.
I feel like we lost the ED a little bit on gurgled.
Okay.
Let's back up just a little bit.
Tom gurgled with the. This is much more like what my usual recording pace is.
Little tongue twister, though.
Oh, yeah. Who wrote this? Tom gurgled with delight, offering no escape for Vincent. With a pained chuckle, Vincent took up the next section. Oddly, I did. It was mentioned in A Girl's Primer on Glamour. My dear, I believe that you're using a discussion of craft to change the subject. Did you land in the pond again? Herr Scholes laughed. Herr Scholes lifted a finger into the air. Vincent shook his head, laughing now at the memory. Herr Scholes winked. Vincent tilted his head, staring at the older man in disbelief. Jumping to the middle of 19. Vincent's
Give
gaze.
me 1 second here.
Oh, sure. Sorry. This is a really strange process for everyone listening. This is not. I mean, this is how you normally do something with multiple narrators, but we don't usually work this way, Dustin and I. He has engineered 2 of the other books?
Yep, 2 of the other ones, yep.
Yeah.
Let's see here. I just want to make sure I have all these markers where I need them real quick.
Oh yeah, take your time. I can chat with our studio audience, who I can't hear. You guys may be writing questions, but I'm not even going to attempt.
All right, so I think
Okay.
we're in the clear now. So we're jumping down to page 19 now, right?
Yes. Vincent's gaze went a little distant.
Gotcha.
Vincent's gaze went a little distant, as though he were looking into the ether or into memory. Jane asked, "But why were you stealing?" "But why were you stealing out?" Vincent's smile slipped a fraction. In the hesitation, she saw him consider avoiding the question. Then he gave a little shrug. For a moment, the memory of his father's abuse haunted his face. Then he cleared his expression, as if from habit. He shifted Tom to his other arm. Herr Scholes glared at Jane's husband. She shrank back in her chair herself, even though his look was not turned upon her. The abashed look returned, and Jane could imagine her husband as a pupil of 1 in 20. He knit his hands together, ducking his head. The door swept open, and Jane's sister entered with a smile. From the hall behind her, an unmistakable bustle announced that the rest of Jane's family. Ugh. From the hall behind her, an unmistakable bustle announced that the rest of Jane's family had arrived back from their excursion. Melody spied their guest and gave a squeal of delight.
Herr Scholes, what a pleasure! Will you stay for dinner? Do say you will. And have they made you hold Tom?
Melody had retained a pleasing plumpness to her figure after the birth of Tom, though that was hardly surprising given the rich food in Vienna. Jane's own clothes were growing tight from the abundance of it's just nodal.
Gotcha. Cool.
Jane's own clothes were growing tight from the abundance of nodal and strudel. Not that a little bit of plumpness would do anything to about. Not that a little bit of plumpness. Sorry. Not that a little bit of plumpness would do anything to balance her overlong nose. Oof. Not that a little bit of plumpness would do anything to balance her overlong nose, but it might soften her sharp chin. On Melody, the fullness gave her a merry cheer that supported her already sunny disposition. Herr Scholes relinquished Tom with a sigh. Entering behind Melody, Alistair O'Brien crossed to shake the glamorous hand. The next few moments were occupied with a procession of parental figures. The next few moments were occupied with a procession of parental figures as Jane's parents and Mr. O'Brien's joined the merry gathering. Mrs. Ellsworth repeated the invitation to dinner and continued to press Herr Scholes to stay, as though he had not given his assent several times already. The conversation turned back to the health of Tom and the pleasures of having an infant in the house, though this latter became more dubious as the young man began to add his own contribution to the volume of noise. While they were attempting to quiet the boy, Alistair escaped the small circle and went to Vincent. He took the small packet, clearly grateful for an excuse to avoid the bustle, and sat with them by the window for better light. Herr Scholes smacked his forehead with the flat of his palm. Jane shook her head. I'm afraid not. We had originally thought to seek some new commissions, but with the state of the nation presently...
Princess Charlotte.
Melody sighed in commiseration, making those necessary arrangements... Melody sighed in commiseration, making those necessary arrangements to attend to her son.
Such a tragedy.
The Prince Regent's daughter had died birthing her stillborn son the previous November, though news traveled so slowly that Jane and her family had not received word until recently.
Stop there for a sec. Just want to listen back to one thing real quick. Just make sure it's not in the audio. Yep, we're good. So we'll just continue where we were.
With all the resources the royal family had, and with excellent medical care, it did not seem possible that Princess Charlotte should come to such an end. Yet women died of childbirth so often, it should not have surprised Jane that even a member of the royal family could be felled. The entire nation was in mourning. For the year after the death, the streets of London would be lined with crape-covered windows. Ladies would dye their wardrobes black, and gentlemen would wear a band of black upon their sleeve. Glamorists, oh, actually, that should be upon their sleeves, because gentlemen's plural.
I'll make that change there.
Thanks.
Cool. I think we can just come in after wardrobes black.
Okay. And gentlemen would wear a band of black upon their sleeves. Or maybe that should be bands of black upon their sleeves. No, I think I'm fine. Sorry.
You want to keep it sleeves then?
Sleeves, yes, a band of black.
Perfect.
Glamorists would be briefly employed to strip homes of glamour for the duration of the mourning period. It was such a desolate tradition. When Christ had risen after the third day, he had let the disciples stick their fingers in his wounds, saying, "Let there be no illusions here." So while in mourning, a house stood bare to the eye to remind the inhabitants of the one who was lost. Even here in Vienna, Jane and Vincent had pulled the glamour from the house as a gesture of respect for the death of the...
I think I want to have you go back to even here in Vienna.
Okay.
Just kind of a loud noise outside. I want to make sure it doesn't get in there.
Even here in Vienna, Jane and Vincent had pulled the glamour from the house as a gesture of respect for the death of the Prince Regent's heir and her son, as bare as a house in mourning. Which meant that there would be little work for glamorists in Britain in general, and none at all for the Prince Regent's glamorists. Glamorist, singular. Which meant that there would be little work for glamorists in Britain in general, and none at all for the Prince Regent's glamorist. Herr Scholes cleared his throat. Possibly, it would be very agreeable to remain in one place for a while. Their tour of the continent had been extended rather longer than they had originally planned. Jane turned to get Vincent's opinion, more than a little surprised.
Describe Vincent's opinion one more time, yeah. Is your script marked? Because I'm surprised you're able to just drop right down and know who's talking right away.
No, it's not marked.
You just wrote the book, maybe?
I wrote the book, yeah. Yeah, I used to always highlight the thing, and then I had a book that I didn't have time to prep for, and...
Did it just go better, or...?
It went better, and I realized that what was happening was that when I marked it, at least for me, that I was...
like second guessing?
I was anticipating.
Oh, okay.
And starting to skip down the page, and so I was doing a lot more random insertions.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, then no prepping from now on.
I prep pronunciations on the page.
Nice. I'm just kidding. I'm just playing.
Yeah.
All right. Here we go.
Jane turned to get Vincent's opinion, more than a little surprised that he had not expressed some curiosity about the project. He sat in the window in a state of shock, though not at Herr Scholl's news. His face was a blank mask, breath held, as he stared at one of the papers that Mr. O'Brien had brought in.
Oh, one of the letters.
One of the letters. Oops. His face was a blank mask, breath held, as he stared at one of the letters that Mr. O'Brien had brought in. From Jane's seat, she could make out a black border on the edge of the paper. That, with his rigid expression, could only mean that he had received word of a death. Vincent fished himself and looked up. Melody, who was less acquainted with his mood, said, "Herr Scholes has a possible situation for you." He looked down at the letter again, folding it so the border no longer showed.
"It is a school for glamorists in London. Is that not grand?"
"Speaking of learning glamour, Herr Scholes, would you tell my sister about your grandson's first use of the art?" Jane tried to draw the group's...
No, I want to try that one more time. You took a number of breaths in that sentence, and maybe just maybe
Smooth it?
Yeah, smooth it out just a little bit more, maybe.
Speaking of that,
But now I can't even say the sentence. I'll try it again.
speaking of learning glamour, Herr Scholes, would you tell my sister about your grandsons? Herr Scholes, would you tell my sister about your grandson's first use of the art? Jane tried to draw the group's attention away from Vincent. He was clearly discomfited, or rather, it was clear to Jane that he was distressed. To another, he might appear merely distant or unconcerned. His agitation was marked by a layer of excessive calm, spoiled only by a faint tremor in his hand as he turned the folded letter over and over.
Question.
Yes.
Is it spoiled?
No, it's spoiled.
Spoiled. Okay.
Did I say spoiled?
I want to make sure that you didn't say spoiled. So
Okay.
let's just listen back. To me, it sounds like spoiled.
All right, let's do it again.
Cool.
His agitation was marked by a layer of excessive calm, spoiled only by a faint.
And now I'll just make up words.
Spoiled only by a faint tremor in his hand as he turned the folded letter over and over. He made a show of listening to Melody and Herr Scholes compare notes about infant glamour, but his gaze stared through them as if he were watching the ether. Jane tried to think of some errand that could offer her an excuse to take Vincent out of the room and find out what news he had received. She now rather wished they had not invited Herr Scholes to stay for dinner. Before she could think of a ruse, Vincent stood and crossed the room to Jane. He leaned down to her, handing her the letter. And
Note to her, just he leaned down.
Sorry.
Yep.
he leaned down, handing her the letter, and whispered,
And why don't we stop the hangout now, since that is the first chapter.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you all very much. I'll come back to the thing by the place, the comments below, and answer questions later. But right now I need to go record chapter 2. Thanks for listening.
Bye, everybody.